In this video, we will be solving quadratic equations by three different methods. First, we will solve by taking square roots. Next, we will solve by completing the square. And then we will solve using the quadratic formula. First, let's see how to solve the quadratic equation using square roots. So here's what's meant by that. We would start by subtracting 5 from both sides. That's going to give us 3 times x plus 2 squared is equal to negative 12. A lot of students are tempted to distribute the 3, but you can't do that because it's being squared. Exponents come before multiplication, so you cannot distribute. So instead we will get rid of the 3 by dividing both sides by 3, like this. Alright, that way the 3 is gone, and that leaves us to write x plus 2 squared is equal to negative 4. Now we don't distribute the 2 or square the pieces. We unsquare things by taking the square root. So I will take the square root of both sides, and anytime we do that, the solution could be positive or negative. So now we have x plus 2 is equal to plus or minus 2i. Of course, the negative under the radical means it's imaginary. Now the last step to get x by itself, we just need to subtract 2 from both sides. But go ahead and put that negative 2 in the front before the plus or minus. So that's going to leave us with x equals negative 2 plus or minus 2i. These are not like terms, so this is as far as we can go. Alright, so that's how you solve by taking square roots. Now, solving by taking square roots and solving by completing the square are very closely related. In fact, anytime we complete the square, we will wind up solving by square roots eventually. It just takes a couple extra steps. So the first step is to get this number out of the way. This number needs to be a special number, and 10 is not it. So subtract 10 from both sides. Just get it out of there. However, I'm going to leave a space right here. So now I'm going to have x squared minus 8x, leave a gap, and that's equal to negative 10. Now, filling in this number is what is called completing the square. This number has to be half of the middle squared. So we're going to take half of this. That would be negative 4. If you take negative 4 and square it, you get positive 16. This will always be a positive number because a negative times negative is positive. Now the most common mistake is to complete the square and then just go on with the problem. But by adding 16 on the left, we have thrown the equation out of balance. So when you do half the middle squared and you come up with 16, you have to put that number on both sides of the equation so the two sides remain equal. Now we will factor on the left-hand side. So this is always going to factor down as the same thing twice. So it makes it very easy to factor. X squared is x times x. 16 is 4 times 4. Now looking at the middle term tells you what the signs need to be. So negative and negative. Meanwhile over here this is 6. Now because these are the same thing twice, we can just write x minus 4 squared. So now you can see how this is shaping up to be just like when we solved by taking square roots. So in fact, that is what we're going to do. To unsquare this, we will take the square root of both sides. Don't forget your plus or minus. So that's going to leave us with x minus 4 is equal to plus or minus radical 6. To get x by itself, we now need to add 4 to both sides. And again, put it in the front. So the final answer will be x equals 4 plus or minus radical 6. Alright, so that's it for number 19. That's how you solve by completing the square. Alright, finally we're going to solve a quadratic equation using the quadratic formula. Alright, you have to have the quadratic formula memorized, and it goes like this. First of all, you have to understand that the quadratic formula relies on having a quadratic equation in standard form. Ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. Alright, given standard form like this, the quadratic formula tells us what the solutions will be. And it's opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac, whoops, all over 2a. And for my students, to help them remember it, we would sing it as a song, and we'd go opposite of b, plus or minus square root, plus or minus square root, b squared minus 4ac, b squared minus 4ac, all over 2a, all over 2a. So there are lots of different songs that you can sing to help you remember the quadratic formula. But if you're having trouble, try using song. Anyway, so all you have to do is know your A, B, and C and plug those in. Now, having said that, the part underneath the radical here, this part right here, the b squared minus 4ac, this is called the discriminant. Okay, b squared minus 4ac without the radical is called the discriminant. And I would recommend always calculating the discriminant first and then going from there. Now this equation is already in standard form with a being 2, b being negative 4, and c being negative 70. Now if you happen to notice that all three of these numbers are divisible by 2, then that's something that you could have done is you could have divided everything in this equation by 2. And that would give you x squared minus 2x minus 35 is equal to 0. So you could do the quadratic formula with this version, and we should get the same answer in the end. So it shouldn't matter which one you do. I'm going to do it with the original numbers, with the 2, negative 4, and 70, but you should get the same answer either way. So first, the discriminant. So my discriminant, okay, is b squared minus 4ac. Okay, so b squared, so that's negative 4 squared minus 4 times 2 times negative 70. Alright, this is my discriminant. Now I know that negative 4 squared is positive 16. So I've got positive 16 times 4 times 2 times negative 70. If you're going to use your calculator to do this, I recommend squaring this in your head, like I just did. You know it's always going to be positive, and then typing this into your calculator. So that would look like this. So I'm getting 576. Notice that if I were to type it in like this, alright, I told you I would normally do the negative 4 squared in my head, and I know that's going to be positive. But if you try to type it in like this, negative 4 squared, Notice you get the wrong answer. It's not 576, it's 544, which is not right. And this is a very, very common mistake. Negative 4 squared. If you want the negative to be included, you have to put it in parentheses. So that's why this is wrong. If you type it in with parentheses around the negative 4, now you get the same answer, 576. Anyway, back to the problem. So, well, I should have. Let's go ahead and follow through. So the discriminant is 576. You should always calculate that number separately. Okay, and now I will do the rest of the quadratic formula. So the solutions are opposite of b. So if that's negative 4, I'm going to put a positive 4. Plus or minus the square root. And here comes the discriminant, which is our 576, all over 2a. Since a is 2, then 2a is 4. I would not type this whole thing into my calculator either. I would go ahead and do the square root of 576 separately. Alright, so that's 24. That was a perfect square. So that gives me x is equal to 4 plus or minus 24 over 4. Okay, I definitely do not stop here. I'm going to follow through because this is not imaginary, there's no radical. I can go ahead and split this into two different answers. Okay, so plus or minus means 4 plus 24 over 4 or 4 minus 24 over 4. Alright, that's what the plus or minus means, two different solutions. So 4 plus 24, this would be 28 over 4, which would be 7. 4 minus 24, this would be negative 20 over 4, which would be negative 5. So these are the two answers that you get.